Today, we are going to unpack a really powerful analysis of South Africa's newest immigration policies. And according to the source material we're looking at, this isn't just a simple debate about law and order. Nope. It's about these incredibly deep ethical questions that, well, they really get to the soul of a nation.
Okay, that's a heavy question to start with, right? I mean, what could possibly connect those three things? It seems impossible. But the source we're exploring today argues that the link is this profound moral one, all about the choices we humans make when we're faced with someone we see as other. Just keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through this.
So at the very heart of this issue, you've got two major movements. On one side, there's Operation Dudula, which is this vigilante campaign that really bubbles up from street-level anger. And then on the other side, you have Operation New Broom, an official state policy. The article we're looking at presents them as two sides of a very similar and very troubling coin.
Now, to get into the ethics of all this, the source does something really interesting. It doesn't turn to the usual politicians or commentators. Instead, it calls on three witnesses from some of history's darkest moments, people who stared right into the face of good and evil.
First up, we have Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist who actually survived the Nazi concentration camps. And what he saw there was that cruelty and decency, they weren't tied to any one group. He saw guards show unexpected kindness and fellow prisoners show incredible cruelty. His conclusion? Morality isn't about your nationality or your background. It's about the individual choice you make, moment to moment, to be decent or indecent.
And then we have Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, who wrote about the horrors of the Soviet gulags. He landed in a really similar place. For him, the battle between good and evil isn't some external fight of us versus them. No, it's an internal struggle that exists inside every single one of us. It's just part of the human condition. For the third witness, we go way back to this ancient question. And the answer, the parable of the Good Samaritan, totally flips the idea of a neighbor on its head. It argues that your neighbor isn't defined by a shared passport or language or legal status. Your neighbor is simply the person in need that you happen to meet.
So here's the point where it all comes together. When you combine these three perspectives, the whole focus just shifts. The debate about immigration stops being about us versus them, South Africans versus foreigners. It becomes a question we have to ask ourselves. In our actions, in our policies, are we choosing decency or are we choosing indecency?
All right, so with that ethical framework in our heads, let's take a look at the two operations actually happening on the ground in South Africa. How do they measure up when you look at them through this lens of decency?
This table lays it out so clearly. You've got Dudula, which is the raw anger of the street, and New Broom, which has the full institutional power of the state behind it. But look at the methods. Both involve things like document checks and removals. The source argues that even though one is illegal and one is official government policy, they might just be coming from the same dangerous place.
And there's actually a word for that impulse, a word the courts have used, xenoracism. This is a really critical term. It suggests this isn't just a general fear of foreigners, xenophobia. It's more specific. It's a form of racism aimed at other Black Africans, just repackaged as an issue of nationality.
Okay, this next part, this is where the article's critique gets really powerful and, frankly, pretty uncomfortable. It makes the case that to understand what's happening today, you absolutely have to understand South Africa's past.
Think about the name the state chose. Operation New Broom. The official language talks about sweeping through cities. And language was never neutral, right? So the article really zeroes in on this very specific, very deliberate metaphor.
I mean, let's be blunt. What do you use a broom for? You use it to clean up things you don't want. Dust, dirt, trash, refuse, things that don't belong. It's a simple tool, but when you use it as a metaphor for people, well, that's where the danger comes in.
And that leads to the central question. What happens to us, to our society, to our own sense of decency when we start talking about human beings, men, women, children, as if they're trash to be swept away? The source argues it's a slippery slope from seeing people as unlawfully present to seeing them as, well, as dirt.
And this timeline is it's chilling. Because in South Africa, the demand to check your papers is loaded with historical trauma. It echoes the papieren bitte of Nazi Germany, and even more painfully the hated dompas, the passbook, of apartheid. That was the tool used to control the movement of every Black South African. Document checks have always been a tool of oppression there, and the source warns that these new actions are reviving the spirit of a brutal history. So it's the heavy critique, right? But the analysis doesn't just leave us there and actually tries to propose a different path forward, one that's grounded in that ethical framework we talked about earlier, a path toward what it calls a good hope.
So, here it is, the proposed way forward. It's built on 4 key principles. First, use language that treats people with dignity, not like refuse. Second, ensure everyone gets equal protection under the law. Third, create realistic, workable ways for people to get legal status. And finally, the goal should be to build communities that are welcoming, not ones that look for scapegoats.
Let's just zoom in on that equal protection idea for a second, because it's so important. This doesn't mean ignoring the law. It means applying the law fairly to everyone. It means going after the powerful employers who exploit undocumented workers. It means targeting the big criminal syndicates, not just the vulnerable person trying to get by. It's about real justice, not just enforcement.
And you see, this brings us right back to where we started. The article's big conclusion is that the ultimate test of a society isn't found in a person's passport. The real test is a moral one, for every single citizen and for the state itself. It's a daily choice. In our words, our actions, and our policies, are we joining the race of the decent or the race of the indies?
I'm going to leave you with this final quote from the source because it just captures the entire argument so perfectly. It's a powerful reminder that the words and the tools we choose can either build up a society or they can risk sweeping away its very humanity. It's a final thought to maybe consider. What are the metaphors shaping our own communities?